This is your character profile for Eric Birling, the young, aggressive and alcoholic heir to Birling and Co. Eric Birling is the troubled son of Sybil and Arthur Birling and brother to Sheila. In the opening, he is described as not quite at ease, which reflects his behaviour throughout the play. He never feels or seems comfortable, an early indication that he has something to hide. Eric is the odd one out in his family. He drinks heavily, which is often mentioned, fails to understand or care about the implications of his decisions, and hides dirty secrets from the rest of his family. Eric often comes second best when compared to his sister's fiancé, Gerald, especially in the eyes of his father. It is unclear whether Eric is a villain or a victim in the play's events, which makes him a really interesting character to look at. Let's recap on Eric's part to play in Eva's downfall, which comes out fully during Act 3. Eric met Eva in the palace bar. He went back to her room without her permission and forced himself upon her. He claims that he didn't even remember raping her, presumably because he was so drunk at the time. Eric reveals that he later found out that Eva was pregnant with his child, but couldn't afford to feed herself. In an attempt to help her financially, he stole money from his father's business. When she discovered it was stolen money, however, she stopped accepting it, showing us how morally good Eva was in contrast to Eric. Let's dip into a bit of context here, which is how you gain marks for AO3. It was not unusual for upper middle class men to keep mistresses, for example Alderman Megati, who assaults women in the palace bar, and Gerald, who had a quiet and secret affair with Eva. Eric, however, lacks the self-control and maturity to keep the secret, thus threatening to destroy the Birlings' reputation. Eric's odd and unpredictable behaviour throughout the play causes us to feel conflicted about him. While he performs immoral actions, he regrets his mistakes, and in parts we can't help but sympathise with him. When admitting to raping Eva, Eric explains, "I was in that state when a chap easily turns nasty." This means that he was drunk, and that drink leads him to become bad-tempered and violent. While this is uncomfortable to hear, he is at least being honest. Once the inspector has left and the family have begun celebrating an apparent lack of consequences, Eric says, "The fact remains that I did what I did." This shows he stands up for what he thinks is right. He has accepted responsibility and wants his parents to do the same. Look at this graph. Imagine the blue line represents the percentage of guilt Eric expresses throughout the play, and the green line represents the percentage of concern Eric feels for his family's reputation. Notice that Eric seems to feel some guilt even before the play begins, as his secrets play on his conscience. He never, however, feels any concern for his family's reputation. Now let's consider how an audience would respond to Eric Birling. Eric Birling is possibly the most complex member of the family. His part to play in Eva's downfall is probably the worst, yet he accepts the inspector's remarks at the end of the play and challenges his parents' lack of conscience. He is a difficult character to fully understand. Priestley's stage directions surrounding Eric's dialogue, for example, "not quite at ease," "still uneasy," and "suddenly guffaws," show us that he behaves oddly, hinting at his status as the odd one out in the family. We're not supposed to know how to take Eric until he admits his actions in Act 3. Eric's revelation and argument with Sybil acts as the climax of the play. Morally, he comes the furthest, which means he is the character who improves his own sense of what is right and wrong the most, and is a good example of how even the worst of people can change if they are open to it. Remember, for your exam, you will need to remember a number of key and important quotations, as you won't be able to take the text in with you. First, in the opening stage directions, Priestley describes Eric as in his early 20s, not quite at ease, half shy, half assertive. These stage directions suggest that Eric already has something playing on his mind. Not quite at ease is an early indication that he is hiding something, but Priestley keeps us guessing about what this is until Eric actually confesses. When he hears of his father's choice to fire Eva Smith, he says, "Well, why shouldn't they try for higher wages?" Even in Act 1, Eric shows he is confident to stand up to his father, and he has very different views to Arthur. This comment counts as AO1 because it explains the quote, showing an understanding of the text, rather than analysing language, structure or form. During his confession, Eric admits, afterwards she told me she didn't want to go in, but that, well, I was in that state when one easily turns nasty, and I threatened to make a row. While what Eric describes is something very immoral and comes across as uncomfortable for the audience, the fact that he admits to being nasty redeems him somewhat in the audience's eyes. We understand that he acknowledges the gravity of what he has done, which can be contrasted with Sybil or Arthur's reactions to their interrogations. When confronting Sybil for refusing Eva charity money, Eric says, nearly at breaking point, "Then you killed her!" This is the point when things start to get very emotional. The stage directions, nearly at breaking point, show us that we are at the emotional climax of the play. Eric's words to his mother are the angriest we see, and the exclamation mark emphasises his shock at her actions. This quote is significant because it represents a shift in the power dynamic. Before the inspector's interrogation, Sybil would never have been questioned by her child. When the inspector leaves, Eric tries to convince his family to understand the consequences of their actions. He says, "The fact remains that I did what I did, and Mother did what she did, and the rest of you did what you did to her. It's still the same rotten story whether it's been told to a police inspector or to somebody else." This is where we see a real change in Eric, who now becomes the voice of the inspector in his absence. The repetition of "did" stresses the importance of the family's actions. These lines appeal to an audience who have been encouraged to feel the same. We hear in Eric's words what we would love to tell the family ourselves. The fact that Sybil and Arthur ignore Eric's words here further emphasises their own ignorance and makes us frustrated at their attitude. Remember, in any text, but more importantly in a play with a strong message, every character included has a purpose. Like Sheila, as a younger character, Eric Birling represents the possible future. As a character who has a corrupt and immoral past, the fact that Eric seems to change his attitude so deeply during the course of the play gives us real hope that the upper middle classes could change in the future. For J.B. Priestley, Eric represents the idea that change is possible, regardless of what happened in the past. Eric is a sign of hope. Within Eric, Priestley is also presenting his audience with a moral dilemma. Although he could be seen as the obvious villain, we can't help but feel sorry for him when Arthur criticises and compares him to Gerald. By the end, we feel empathy for Eric and are left wondering whether this is fair or okay, given his actions. Priestley probably does this to keep us engaged with the idea of our own morality, actions, and view of what is right and wrong. Remember, to gain marks in AO1, you have to show that you understand the significance of each character and how they progress throughout the text. Eric Birling's key facts are as follows. Eric is a troubled, heavy drinker and the odd one out in his family. Eric raped Eva, getting her pregnant, and stole money from Arthur's company to help her. While his actions are immoral, he feels guilty and tries to help improve the situation. The audience are left feeling conflicted about him as a character, and Eric is representative of the idea that change is possible for everyone.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Check out more of our content and remember to subscribe to our channel.